Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, we've known the who for quite some time now, but today we finally found out the when. The schedule is finally here.
Yeah, it seems like we just wrapped up the 2024 season that obviously dipped a little bit into 2025. And with all of the fun that was and the emotional roller coaster that provided, after a quick breather, here we are moving right on to that 2025 season. Here we are Tuesday. Earlier today, the schedule was released. So we, again, as you mentioned, Brad, ASU knew the teams they were going to play. They knew those non-conference games. There was a little bit of a leak on the conference opener a couple days ago, but the pieces have been sorted out. So we're here to break it all down. There's quite a bit to like about the schedule, some different and new faces that ASU will see, even in being year two of the Big 12 conference. So quite a bit to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll be breaking down this 2025 schedule and kind of how it all lays out for the Devils. But and also now, we're now into early February and kind of the portal cycle has calmed down a little bit. The signing day period in December is well behind us. So now that we're able to kind of catch our breath a little bit, we're going to dive into the position groups for the Sun Devil football team before they head into spring ball and kind of give our thoughts as to how things are looking right now. Maybe throw in some ratings and how confident we're feeling. And at the end of the show, we're going to be talking to one of those new Sun Devils and a very exciting addition, wide receiver Jaren Hamilton, coming over from Alabama. But before all that, Joe, let's dive into some of the recent commits in both the 2025 and 2026 classes for the Devils. Of course, offensive line. It's always a very important position on the field. ASU is returning 4 starters, but with Ben Coleman making the move likely to center, that left guard spot's going to be very interesting to track through spring and fall camps. And ASU is bringing in another big body to be in that competition. Douglas Taloma, 6'6", 345-pounder, coming over from Riverside Community College. And any folks that don't know ASU's roster pretty well, that's the same community college that current starter at right guard, Kyle Scott, played at. He had reported offers from UCLA, UNLV, San Diego State, amongst others. So some more beef for that offensive line.
Yeah, it's a good pickup. Kind of late in the game. We're right here around the traditional signing day period. It is always interesting to come across, the early part of February and think back to how it was not that long ago when this was the one and only signing day. So for it to be pretty much a, a real quiet time of year is an interesting thing. Obviously, he's coming from the JUCO level. Now, we don't quite know what the eligibility situation is going to be like for JUCO players moving forward. Like, is everybody going to get this deal that we've seen unfold in the last few months where they get to, regain some eligibility? So it'll be interesting to see how things pan out and how many years he has to play at ASU. That's an interesting little storyline, to keep in mind with that. But obviously a big body guy, comes from a very successful program there at Riverside. And so that's an area, of somewhat need that ASU has. And we'll see what he has, and if he's someone that can step right up and contribute, in a potential starting role or, as a depth role. But it's a big body to have at a position group where it's good to have bodies.
And so ASU also was able to get a commitment in the 2026 class, and there's probably going to be some more coming along the road down there, depending on when you're listening to this. But as of this recording, they did land a commitment from a tight end, a very talented, high upside player, Hayden Vircher, committing after the ASU held a junior day event. 6'4", 220-pounder, currently a 3-star by the recruiting services. This past season as a junior, caught 70 balls for over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. One of those freak athlete types, an 80-inch wingspan, 31.5-inch vertical leap, clocked at 21 miles per hour. So ASU, of course, is starting to add some very intriguing pieces at the tight end position group this past year. Now it looks like they're going to be in good hands for years to come.
Yeah, if you can keep this whole crop together, each of the last few years, ASU has made some very impressive additions at tight end between Jaden Fortier, now AJ Ia, and adding this to the list as well. Obviously factor in, the existing players on the roster and what they do through the transfer portal. So it's a position group that, though it got pretty much decimated before last year in terms of just everybody being wiped out between graduation and transfers, they've obviously restocked in a significant way. You got Shimon Mater, of course, coming back for 2025, after an all-conference caliber season last year. So short and long term, the position appears to be in good hands. Now, you obviously have to say that a little bit with a grain of salt these days because you never know what can happen one year over to the next. But at least things are lined up for that to be a strong position.
Yeah, definitely. And ASU looked to be getting some speed for that wide receiver room with a JUCO wide receiver. Link Rhodes made a commitment about this time last week, but never mind. He actually has since decommitted and then I believe recommitted or committed to SMU. So easy come, easy go. But as I'll talk about in a minute. They've been pretty active at the wide receiver spot. So while maybe missing some speed with that element, it seems like they're still in pretty good hands.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that this is not the first time this has happened with SMU. If you recall, a couple years ago when they had a defensive line transfer who committed and then within a matter of days switched to SMU, it's like, are the SMU coaches just tapping the phones from ASU or seeing when players commit to ASU and then they decide to go a heavy push after them, or is it just a coincidence? I'm not sure, but yeah, ASU I'm sure will just move along and replace that position on the roster.
Yeah, we might have to see if what Rob Likens is up to. I believe he's still their OC out there or something, or the wide receivers coach or something. But
He is, and he's my guy. For people give him a lot of slack. He's actually one of the nicest dudes you'll ever meet.
yeah.
So I'll exempt him from any disdain. It's dog eat dog business for sure.
So of course, as we mentioned, there'll probably be some more fruit bearing from that junior day event that we'll be talking about on our next episode. That'll be coming as ASU has made quite the impression and has a really fast start to this 2026 signing class. All right, Joe. Big news of the day: the schedule finally here. Let's start off, of course, and go run it down. We've known the non-con for a while. They're opening on Saturday, August 30th against NAU, kind of the Arizona Border Regions thing where every year NAU plays either the Wildcats or the Sun Devils. That's to be expected. Things really kind of ramp up though in week 2 when ASU is heading to SEC country. The return of the home and home series. Mississippi State came here last year. Devils are returning the favor on September 6th.
Yeah, and by my math, ASU is 0-2 on the road against SEC teams. At least teams when they're actively in the SEC. Obviously teams have come and gone from that conference over the years. The 2009 loss at Georgia, 2012 at Missouri. So ASU will look to break that streak in a game that they'll certainly be favored quite a bit, I would imagine, against the Mississippi State team that is quite struggling.
And then in the next week, as the return of the home and home with Texas State, Bobcats coming to Tempe, looking to avenge the Sun Devils' second half rally win in San Marcos last September. It's a Bobcat team, that was we were talking about it. Maybe it could be a dark horse G5 playoff run type of team last year. Still had a pretty solid year by their program historical standards. Didn't exactly pan out they like what they were hoping for necessarily, but GJ Kenny has been doing some good things there, so it's definitely not a game you can just easily pencil in as a W.
Yeah, Texas State was interesting. They didn't have quite the season that they were expected to. Both of us were high on them. Thought they had, even playoff potential, or to at least remain in that conversation. You'd imagine they'd still give ASU a game, but in Tempe, uh, really no reason for this game coming up this fall to be anywhere near as close as the one that transpired in San Marcos last year.
All right, so now let's get into the meat of things, the conference schedule, the Big 12. Finally, and I don't know if they were. It seemed like a lot of the other power conferences had gotten their schedules out in the prior months, and so maybe the Big 12 was lagging. Maybe they wanted the headliner last to take the stage, but we finally, as of this morning, got the full slate. We've known the teams. The rotation is known through the 2027 season. If you haven't seen, in terms of ASU, they will be playing in conference home and away. This year, things start off with what I think is going to be a pretty difficult game. I think one that's really going to tell us a lot. And also, as someone pointed out, interesting that the second straight year as a Big 12 team, ASU opens up conference play on the road. They're heading to Waco to face Baylor.
Yeah, that's one that's going to be a real interesting game. Looking through the numbers, last time ASU played Baylor was in 1990. As you look through this list, if you recall, last year there were several instances of Big 12 opponents where it was the very first time that ASU had ever played that opponent. You're actually not going to see that in this year's schedule. Now, there are some teams that ASU hasn't played for decades, but just no very first timers. Baylor finished 8-5 last year, finished strong. So that's a team, playing on the road. That's a squad that can get it going at just about any time. Over the last decade or so, obviously they've had some tremendous highs and some significant lows as well. That's going to be a big one, just as was the case last year, as you mentioned, that road game at Texas Tech. ASU, a lot of folks are going to be looking for them to sweep out that non-conference schedule. So that's going to be a huge matchup in Waco there, just barely before the month of September comes to an end.
And then the finale for the month, ASU will return home between the Buttes to face TCU, another tough test. But of course, that one in home, ASU was able to pull off the undefeated home record last season. So it's gonna be an interesting battle against the Horned Frogs.
If my research right, it's the first time ASU's played TCU since 1975. They finished 9-4. That I like double checked my notes to. I didn't know that they finished quite that good. They're
Yeah.
a team that obviously has gone back and forth over the last few years, from a national championship game appearance to a losing record, back up to a 9-win season last year. So certainly not one that you can take lightly. Those first two matchups, those teams combined to win 17 games last year. So for folks who, I don't know if anybody's thinking that ASU is gonna have a walk in the park to get back to the Big 12 championship game, but it's going to start with two challenging contests.
Yeah, I mean, as we learned last year, this is a conference where there's really no gimme games. Top to bottom, pretty good conference. Of course, there's a lot of parity in the Pac-12 as well, but it seems like this one is here. Things in the big life in the Big 12 is a little bit elevated in that respect. The following week, that's Saturday, ASU will enjoy the first of two bye weeks. That's I think a nice little feature, especially with the way the schedule breaks out. Then they'll return to action for I think right here these between these the two bye weeks. This 4 game slate I think is really going to be kind of the key to this whole season if ASU is going to be able to contend. Things start off with a trip to Salt Lake City to face Utah. Now, of course, it's a program that really struggled a little bit, but man, as long as Whittingham's up there, I'm not counting them out of anything.
Yeah, gosh, what, ASU hasn't won in Salt Lake since 2017, if memory serves correctly.
That the
It's
JJ Wilson pick six game.
That would be that with a bunch of turnovers, right? I think Christian Sam had, yeah, like that was a different era for Utah for sure. Different era for both teams, to say the least. It's going to be a different look. You're not going to have Cam Rising there for the first time since the 90s, I think. So you're probably going to have that Devin Dampier, the Saguaro graduate, coming over
Yeah.
from New Mexico. So a familiar face to some, but maybe not so much in terms of what ASU has seen against Utah in the past several years. Though Utah was 5-7 last year, that still is a game that carries a lot of magnitude, a lot of weight. Some call it a rivalry, some don't. Just going to be really interesting. This upcoming year is going to be very interesting to see if Kyle Whittingham, and I'll lump in Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State because those are obviously two of the longest tenured active head coaches in college football, and last year both had terrible seasons. Very eager to see if those two schools can bounce back, or are they in a position where the game has passed those two by? Because I'm suspicious that maybe it has.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll learn a lot because, as you mentioned, it's gonna be the first time in a while that they have a new quarterback under center. But man, they've Witt's just been the model of consistency up there. So we'll see exactly how this U team's able to bounce back. But no matter what kind of talent level out there, playing at Rice Eccles is always a hostile environment, always a challenge. The next couple of games after that, ASU will be at home back in Tempe, and I think it's going to be two challenging games. First up on the 18th, they'll be hosting Texas Tech. Of course, Red Raiders took ASU down a season ago before ASU really got things dialed in. Texas Tech has been throwing some dollars around this offseason. They have really remade their roster. So even though they've lost some guys, Taj Brooks in that group, I believe Micah Hudson, their 5-star wide receiver freshman from a season ago, I believe he's gone, but they are still going to be loaded, and that's going to be a real tough game.
Yeah, and that's something that is a little bit of redemption maybe for ASU, obviously for dropping the game in Lubbock last year, but that's a cool matchup. I'm eager to see how ASU competes against that team and against both those, Texas Tech and Houston. It's interesting that stretch, October 18th and 25th against Texas Tech and Houston, it's the only back-to-back stretch where ASU will play consecutive road or home games. It's almost like an
Oh, that's right.
even
Yeah.
alternate of home road, home road. So, that's something that is beneficial to not have multiple road games, in succession. So, really interesting thing about the schedule. And yeah, again, these are games that even no matter what you look at the schedules and the records from last year, you can throw a lot of that out the window because there are some teams that have been highly competitive. Houston is one that's been really interesting to figure out because they had such great runs years ago, but struggling to acclimate to this level. Oh, by the way, ASU hasn't played Houston since 1990, which I believe was the
Japan.
game that was played in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. I remember my dad went out to that because that's when he was working for Channel 3. He got me a Giants hat, but from the
The
Japanese
Yakamori Giants
Giants,
or
the
something like
baseball
that.
team. Yeah, something like that. I don't want to even take a stab at it because I know that I would butcher it. So yeah, and that was the David Klingler 700 plus
It was like, yeah,
passing
like
game.
1,200 total yards or something in that game.
It was something ridiculous. We'll have to ask my dad about it next time that we have him on because yeah, it wasn't technically like a bowl game, but it was like a postseason game played in Japan every year for a stretch of time. So yeah, if that's not something that you're familiar with, go back and look up ASU's 1990 season. I think it was like the Coca-Cola American Bowl or something along those lines. I think Coke was the sponsor. Yeah, look that up. Some interesting stuff that
I
occurred in
believe
that game.
Doug Haller when he wrote a really good retrospective piece on that for the Athletic. So if any Athletic subscribers out there, because yeah, that game was wild both on and off the field. Look back on, but yeah, the on the 25th, the Cougars are coming to town. First year under Willie Fritz, there's some ups and some downs. They did show some signs a little bit on the back half of the season of getting things a little bit on track. Willie Fritz, though, for me, is one of the best coaches in America, so I expect Houston to be a much tougher team this upcoming season. And then to close out that 4-game stretch I talked about before, the second bye week of the year. This is a game that I think our friend Jonathan Poppy said maybe with some of the other national games. I think this could be potentially a college game day type of situation. November 1st, a Big 12 title game rematch as the Devils are heading to Ames, Iowa to face Iowa State.
Yeah, and then naturally, given some of the teams that are not on ASU's schedule, this is going to be the best team from 2024 that the Sun Devils will play, be it conference or non-conference, throughout the duration of the schedule. So that's a big matchup. Iowa State does lose some talent, especially on offense. Those skilled receivers, I believe, were both seniors last year, but they've made some additions in the transfer portal. So obviously, a lot will transpire from now until November 1st to see where both programs are headed. But it has the potential to be a high tier, high caliber matchup. I would anticipate that most folks, as far as the predictors, are probably going to have ASU and Iowa State at worst in the top 3 in the preseason in the Big 12. Probably throwing BYU in there in some capacity. So this game is probably going to have some preseason hype. It might be maybe the game in the Big 12, at least in the preseason when you look ahead of it, because ASU, as I'm sure we'll talk about, doesn't play BYU. So those top tier matchups, this really might be it. What folks are looking at is like kind of the game of the year in the Big 12.
Yeah, and then after that game, ASU will enjoy the second of their 2 bye weeks before returning to action at home on November 15th against West Virginia. And Rich Rod, I believe, he's back in town.
So that is a good point. That will be the case. What, for the first time since
2017.
2017? Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that he's around here. And ASU played West Virginia in that 2015 Cactus Bowl that went south a little bit for the Sun Devils there. So yeah, again, some odd storylines there. That's another one of those teams that ASU didn't play last year in the Big 12. 6 of the 9 conference games that ASU has this year will be against teams that it didn't play in the regular season last year. Utah, Texas Tech, and Arizona are the only teams that returned that ASU played in the regular season. Of course, ASU played Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game, but again, just a very different look. Obviously, it's by design. You have these rotating philosophies of how they build the schedule, but even in year 2 of the Big 12, it almost has a new feel to it because there's so many teams that ASU will play this year that they didn't in 24.
All right, so then ASU's final road game of the regular season will be November 22nd when they head up to Boulder. And at this point, as of this recording, Coach Prime will still be there. We'll see. Quick aside, Joe, did you see the University of Arizona's schedule release video on Twitter?
I did not take time out of my day to do that. I might have them like blocked or muted or something. I've done some petty things, so I have no idea what they put together.
It is worth your time. Legitimately good. They went like Los Angeles Chargers in terms of just like a kind of a fake TikTok video, but they really had some good jabs at all their opponents. And the one they did for Colorado won't spoil it is hilarious. Made me laugh out loud in the newsroom. It is legitimate good. Got to give credit where credit's due. But yes, ASU will be heading up to Boulder. Probably a chilly time of year, November 22nd, to face the Buffaloes that are going to be having to replace a lot. But I guess it's kind of one of the things you'd rather for a team that's kind of reloading like Colorado. You'd hope to get them early in the year when they're still figuring things out. But this is going to be the penultimate game of the year.
Yeah, really eager to see what Colorado's like at this point in the season. You lose Shedeur Sanders, you lose Travis Hunter, among others. Obviously they've made some acquisitions in the transfer portal and traditional recruiting, but it's at least it's tough to replace a Heisman Trophy winner, and it's tough to replace a prestigious quarterback who's the head coach's son. I mean, those are just two pieces that you cannot replace. So I'm just really eager to see what becomes of this Colorado football program. You mentioned playing them early in the season. Man, the year before, you almost wish you would have played them later in the year because they really took a tumble. So we will see what transpires when things get to November the 22nd. Again, I'm just very curious how Colorado football in general is going to be having to replace those two star-studded players, among others that are not going to be on the roster.
All right, that brings us to the 99th playing of the Territorial Cup game. This one, however, the date is not exactly known. It'll be either Friday, the November 28th, or Saturday, November 29th. We should find out. Of course, this is like everything for TV reasons over the next couple weeks exactly when. So it won't be like one of those dreaded 6-day or 12-day selections. It'll be either that Friday, Saturday after Thanksgiving. I know there's a lot of traditionalists that love it on that Friday. Some folks would like it on Saturday. If it is on Saturday, Joe, that would mean the entire schedule is free of any weekday games.
And even if it's on a Friday, that's
Yeah.
a different Friday than other Fridays. So realistically, that aspect, and that's like the first takeaway that I had, that's a major, major win. I don't know. We'd have to look back, or I don't know if the data is available when the last time ASU had all Saturday games. I mean, usually at least to get that, especially when you're playing an FCS team, an NAU game can often be on a Thursday, or you have those other games Thursday, Fridays for TV. So those first 11 weeks being all on Saturdays, that's outstanding. I don't know that there's anybody who prefers a Friday or Thursday game over a Saturday. And then again, that Territorial Cup game, if it happens to be on a Friday, that's what we grew up seeing. That's almost what feels right, is a Black Friday day game. So if that's the case, then that's all good by me. Since most folks have that as part of a holiday weekend, it's not as big of an adjustment as just some random Friday in September or October. So that component of the schedule, I think, is a big deal. We talked a couple other notes I had. You talked about you don't have back-to-back road games. That's a big deal. I like how you have the 5-game bye, 4-game bye, and then 3 split. So you don't have long stretches or short stretches. Between the buys. Talking about the teams that ASU misses, of course, the top name on that list, you don't have BYU, also don't have Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Cincinnati, or UCF. So, BYU, again, a lot of folks are probably going to pick them in ASU 1 and 2. Some might pick them to win the conference. Kansas State is going to be a team that's probably in the top 4 or 5 at worst in the preseason. So, you would imagine, I know we had this conversation last year and things turned out way different in terms of, they play this tough schedule of Utah and Oklahoma State and Arizona. Didn't really work out that way, but at least moving forward, I think you can have some high confidence that Kansas State and BYU will be pretty good. So to not have them on the schedule might benefit ASU.
Yeah, overall, I think it's a pretty good slate for the Devils. And, credit to Graham Rossini. He said that, it's going to be a priority for them to have as many Saturday games, especially those home openers with the great success they saw last season with the Wyoming opener. And although we remember back to last year, they did have, I don't forget when, I think it was May, June or something, when the networks moved that Texas State game to a Thursday.
Yeah.
So maybe not out of the woods yet, but it's as of right now, it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, just by luck alone, that you feel like ASU's not going to get away with all Saturday games. Like even after having won the conference, you wonder if there's going to be some Friday night that they want to put that team on display. So we might have to take some wagers or something to see if this is going to be at least the first 11 games, if they all end up being on Saturdays, and see, who ends up being right. Because if I had to guess, I just feel like ASU fans can't be quite that lucky to get all Saturday games, but we will see.
All right. So now that we know the schedule and we know who and when they will play, let's talk about some of those players that'll be on the field playing those games. We're going to run down now each position group, kind of talk about where that group is, kind of post main portal frenzy window, post signing day, and as of course the ASU is going to be looking to get back to the field for spring practices, probably sometime in late March. We'll start things off at the quarterback position. Of course, Sam Levitt's coming back, already getting the Heisman buzz. Unlike the last couple of years, you know that he's QB1. After that, that's where things get a little tricky. Of course, you have Jeff Sims coming back, veteran backup, knows the system. But Trenton Bourget, he's making that switch, hanging up the cleats, grabbing the whistle. He's heading to the coaching ranks. Michael Butter Tollefson, the 2025 signee, he actually was able to practice with ASU near the end of the season and was with the team in the playoff game as well. Navi Bruzan, the walk-on from Liberty High School here locally, he's in that mix as well. But I think right now, if you got a guy like Sam Levitt at the top, I mean, you got to feel pretty confident. And I believe, Joe, we're going to try to do like a little confidence rating, 1 through 3, 3 being the most confidence, 1 still kind of, the jury's going to be slow out. For quarterback, I'm giving it a 3 just because Sam Levitt is that good.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 3 also, and it's beyond Levitt for me also. Of course, Sam Levitt, he's getting Heisman hype. He'll very likely be the preseason first team all Big 12 quarterback, second team last year. So, I mean, we know what he brings to the table, and obviously there are going to be some departures at quarterback in the Big 12, so that spotlight might even get a little bit brighter. With Sims, and I know that, obviously there's still going to be another transfer window. I know some folks on, social media or message boards have wondered, okay, I hope like some program doesn't suffer like a spring injury and they need some mercenary quarterback to come in and be a starter because he could fit that bill. But as a backup, he's got a lot of starting experience. I know that his start against Cincinnati, as we described last year, he didn't win it, didn't lose it, so it was just kind of there. But as far as a backup, that's a good guy to have as a backup quarterback. Going to the third string, obviously, you're going to be focusing on a true freshman there, or redshirt freshman, depending on whether it be a guy like Bruzan or Tollefson. If you get to your third quarterback, I think you got a lot of problems, so that's something that kind of is what it is. So the pecking order and the top quality of it is something that, yeah, I have extreme level of confidence. Now, the main thing there is making sure that Sam keeps on his trajectory. You don't have that proverbial sophomore slump where somebody figures you out. You don't have it like a guy like Noah Fafita, who did what he did in 2023, and then 2024 was a complete afterthought. So that sophomore slump and avoiding that is going to be a big deal. But based on what we know and what we expect, you have to have tremendously high confidence in that position.
It should be noted that one guy who will not be in this quarterback mix is a 2025 4-star signee, Cam Dyer. Was ultra productive as a high school quarterback in New Mexico. Initially, when he committed, it looked like he was going to be making the switch and kind of taking the Hines Ward path to wide receiver. However, he was going to be given a chance and came at a quarterback. In fact, he's currently listed on the ASU roster as a quarterback. Unfortunately, he suffered a knee injury and it looks like he'll be shelved for the season. But as we talked about, some good depth there. Moving on, Joe, to running back, and you're missing Cam Scattaboo. That's a big blow. But for me, this group is still a 3 because this is deep. Obviously, you got guys coming back like Kyson Brown, who I think can be a very productive starter in this conference. Raleek Brown hopefully is able to get healthy. That ability there. Jason Brown, Alton McCaskill still in that mix. You're adding 4-star freshman Demarius Robinson. But oh yeah, they in the portal they went out and got an 1,100-yard rusher from Army and Kanye Udo.
I'm going back and forth. I'm gonna I don't know, issuing a challenge. I'm gonna go at 2.5, which seems weird. It seems weird. And I'm trying to pick my words wisely, or really, put my thoughts, vocalize my thoughts, because obviously this isn't really a question or discussion about the impact of the departures, because obviously that would be massive. But that does leave just a gaping hole in this team, in this offense. You do need some guys to step up. There's a lot of potential. Uh, if the stars align, it can be very, very interesting. You talk about a guy like Raleek Brown. If he can be healthy and get some time on the field, can he get to that 5-star level? You still have McCaskill around, who did amazing things a couple years ago, but hasn't been able to get back up to that level. Kyson Brown, so very good as that complimentary back. He had that one start. Uh, Udo is someone that you expect to exceed 1,000 yards. Um, you know what? I'm actually going to bump it up to a 3 because there's one constant among all
Mm,
the change at running
there it
back, and that's
is.
Sean Aguano. And
Yep,
when you
there it
got
is.
Sean Aguano there, in my opinion, the best running back coach in the country, I talk it through and we get up to a higher grade. There we go.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to bring up right there. Yeah, because no matter what, I mean, obviously you're missing the heart and soul, and everything that Scat brought. But Aguano's track record every year he's been in Tempe, he finds a way to have a very very productive starter. So I think while maybe then I won't have one guy putting together, over 2,000 yards from scrimmage and 20 touchdowns. But I think in the aggregate, I think that I'm really confident that group will be able to produce some way, somehow with the offensive coaching staff in place. All right, Joe, a little bit different situation here. Wide receiver. Of course, you have Jordan Tyson, all conference caliber guy, all America conference or caliber type of guy. But then you have, I think, a lot of questions. Malik McClain flashed a little bit, but he took a red shirt last year. They of course were very active as we talked about on the show in the portal. Jalen Moss, Jaren Hamilton, who folks will hear from in a moment. Noble Johnson as well. Some young guys in the signing class, and Corey Butler, Harry Hassman, Uriah Nellums, Chance Abels. Some younger guys, Zechariah Sample, I think is primed for a step up. Derek Eusebio had a touchdown. But to me, I think you have a stud, but then a lot of questions. And I think, that as of right now, I think that they'll figure it out eventually. Maybe you liked the job that liked the job that Heinz Ward did a season ago. But as of right now, I'm going to say maybe, and this might be sound weird just because of what Tyson was able to do. I'm going 1.5.
I'm going to go with the 2 because obviously we kind of do the trade offs of, Jordan Tyson, especially, for him to have the season under his belt that he did last year. And of course, keeping in mind that it took him a little bit to get going last year. So if you just have that connection, that confidence from day one, that's a big deal. I like the spots that we saw from McClain in the Big 12 championship game and in the Peach Bowl. He made some plays. The catch that he had against Iowa State was incredible, and obviously the super highlight play, catching the touchdown pass from Cam Scadaboo. So that's got to help his confidence tremendously. And he's someone that came in, such a unique story with him because he came in like gangbusters in the summer, looked great in preseason camp, and then just didn't really come together. Ended up redshirting. If you think back to around this time last year, we were probably having conversations about both Guillory and Melquan Stovall. Like, all right, these are guys that kind of need to step it up. And they obviously did. So something clicked and something turned around. And was it a Heinz Ward thing? Was it just the stars aligning as it did for ASU as a whole? So, that's something for me that I feel like they can get that, productivity. Moss is someone that I'm real interested to see what he can bring to the table. If he can get at least one of those 2 youngsters between, that they got from Clemson and Alabama, then I think you might have some depth going on there. So it was a position group that was pretty top heavy last year. And you saw, really down the stretch, that stretch that Guillory had over the last, 4 or 5 games, if you include the 2 of the postseason. Stovall, when Tyson was out, excuse me, they really stepped it up late in the season. So while there are pieces to replace, I don't think it's too much of a Herculean task.
Yeah, I think when you take a look at some of the guys that and the talent level and the varying skill sets, I think ultimately they'll get there. But right now the 1.5 is mainly because we just haven't seen a lot of guys do it yet. I think with Moss and what he's able to do at Fresno State, he's probably the most likely to slide in there. But Jaren Hamilton, Noble Johnson, especially coming from some big time programs, they're gonna have the pedigree. And as I mentioned, now I'm staking the claim now. it's going to be a Zechariah Sample advocating podcast. I think that he's in for some big time stuff before the injury as a true freshman. That kind of kept him sidelined for most of the year. He was looking real good, extremely explosive player. So I think there could be some very interesting uses for him. Moving on to the tight end position, Joe. We talked about how it was literally from top to bottom remade over this past season, and after what we saw this past year, Shimon Matera emerged as a all Big 12 caliber player. They lose Marquiston Douglas, but seems like some good additions. Of course, Cameron Harpole is also coming back as well. The highly touted true freshman from a season ago, Jaden Fortier, he looks to be coming back from a severe knee injury. They added a very athletic, with high upside player from Kentucky and Kamari Anderson. Oh no, yeah, one of the highest rated signees in recent recruiting cycles, AJ Ia, coming over from California. Jason Mons, I think, has got a good group to work with.
Oh yeah, I mean this position group got better. I'm going to give it, like in these rankings, I'm giving it a 2.5. I'm a big Mateer fan, and I think he can only get better one year over the next. Harpole is a guy who had a role, on this team. Marquiston Douglas got one pass. All the best to him back at Florida State. Get Fortier healthy. He's someone that they were raving about in the late stages of his recruitment. AJ Ia is a known commodity. So you put this all together, and talk about the Kentucky transfer as well. I mean, you're going to have about a half dozen scholarship guys out there. So they're going to be competing. You bring a little bit of everything. He is huge. I mean, you got size, you got athleticism, you got a guy like Harpole that can be more of a physical presence. So I'm expecting some big things out of this position group. I know it's, kind of that, age old thing talking about a variety of levels of productivity from the tight end group and having been wanting that for a very long time. But I think you got to be really happy with what the staff has done in terms of transfers, recruitment, retention, just the whole gamut of what it takes to put together player personnel. Pretty excited about this group. Low key, it's a group that I think folks should not overlook. And if there are concerns about wide receiver, I think that you can really look at the tight ends as a way to help get the pass game moving along, especially in the early stages of the season.
Yeah, I really like your 2.5 rating right there. I kind of feel that's pretty good as we head into spring ball. All right, so heading into the trenches, offensive line, 4 returning starters. But when you look at it, only 3 guys are going to be coming back at their position from 2024, excuse me, as it looks like Ben Coleman will be making the move from left guard to center. And of course, you're losing Lee Fatanu, who's meant so much on and off the field for this program over the last couple seasons. So as we talked about, ASU did added somebody from the JUCO ranks a little bit earlier, but they have a lot of other younger offensive linemen that'll be in this mix that I'm going to be really interested to see what happens with Saga Tuatele and his group during the spring practices. Sean Naa, after taking a redshirt year after his being thrown into the fire as a true freshman, Champ Westbrook looks like he could be on his way to becoming one of the starting tackles in the future. Terrell Kim is also another very talented guy coming off a redshirt year. Jalen Clem unfortunately missed all of last year, but a very talented guy who had some experience at Washington. So and then you're adding some talent through the transfer portal, and Himeta Obibo, very big-bodied guy, knows ASC or has played high school ball with current left tackle starter Josh Atkins. So it's gonna be real interesting. So I think offensive line right now, maybe a 2, because you have a lot of guys that are, if most of your line coming back at their spots. Be interested to see how Coleman handles the move to center. Smart guy should be able to handle it there, but it is a different spot. And then good battle at guard.
Yeah, 2 was the number that I'm looking at as well. You bring back many starters. This isn't a total overhaul, and it's a group that certainly exceeded expectations last year. So there's a lot to be excited about. A lot of bodies there. But you lose Lee Fatano, and that guy was a leader, a performer. You don't get better with the absence of a player like that, or at least it's very difficult to do so. So that's kind of why there's some trepidation. He talked about moving some pieces around. Sean Naa is someone that had, some bright spots as a true freshman, just baptism by fire out there. Took a year off for the red shirt this past year. So again, not a position where you're truly worried, but there are questions to be answered.
Yeah, and of course, you're losing guys like Cade Briggs, Emmett Boley, so valuable guys that saw some rotational depth as well. So we'll see how it all shakes out. moving to the defensive line group. Of course, you're losing a guy like Jeff Clark in the middle, but I think overall this is a group that at least in terms of experience and talent, is shaping up to be pretty well up the middle. CJ Fight leading the way there. Jacob Kangaika, Zach Swanson. I'd like to see some of the younger guys in that group. JP Dieter plays in Lona Wong a little bit. Another, of course, they went and got a local guy from Oregon and Michael Gardner. The edge group looking good as well, with Clayton Smith, Prince Dorba, Elijah O'Neal taking advantage of the JUCO eligibility thing. Justin Watley, very versatile. But I overall, I was just the way that this defense, for as good as it was for most of last season, we talked about the struggles in the pass rush of making effective plays behind the line of scrimmage. I'd like to see them just really kind of level up after last season. It's going to be, for a lot of these guys, it's going to be their third year in this scheme. So I'd like to see, not so much questions about the talent or the experience, but just I would like to see them kind of level up and start to really show off some refinement.
Yeah, I'll slap a two on that as well. Jeff Clark is someone who really stepped up, especially in the late stages of the season. I thought he had a solid year in his lone season as a Sun Devil. But we talked about how the pass rush left a lot to be desired. So, if we're talking about the combination, with this confidence rankings, if we're talking about the combination of, how good do we think the positions group's going to be? Also, what do they lose and gain year over year personnel wise? If you kind of put that all together in a pot, again, a lot of players come back, a lot of experience, but there are some areas, whether it's depth along the interior of the line or just pass rush ability on the edges or across the board on the D line, gives you something to look at.
Moving a level back on defense at linebacker. Now, of course, you're losing Caleb McCullough, one of the best stories in recent years, a door-to-door Sun Devil, and what he was able to do last year in the spotlight was pretty awesome to see. He's gone, but just about everybody else is back. And I think this is a group where we saw AJ Cooper really do some good things with this linebacker group, with Jordan Crook, Keyshawn Elliott, Zyrus Fiaseu. One guy I'm really looking forward to see get a more of a chance with McCullough gone is Martell Hughes, who got an extensive run, primarily in special teams, but made some plays on defenses as well. He was a converted safety in high school. Took a year to get to know that linebacker spot. I'm really looking forward to see what he's able to do. Isaiah Iosefa, the true freshman, I think is another guy to be watching. Could be an early contributor for this group.
Yeah, to me, it's like a 2.5, real high in the group. Caleb McCullough had such a good year. That's a veteran presence that you're going to miss. Keyshawn Elliott, really looking for him to have a complete season, possibly be a guy that could lead the team in tackles. Talked about it, in our season recap awards show. He started off like gangbusters, leveled off a little bit there. So, again, you lose a key piece of that, but you've got some major depth and guys that have contributed at high levels, both at ASU and other schools. So, got to be pretty excited about the position.
Yeah, I think that's a fair rating, the 2.5 as well. Defensive backs. Now you're losing Shamari Simmons. That's going to hurt. He has been such a crucial part of this team during his years in Tempe. But overall, 4 out of the 5 starters are back. But of course, with also the loss of LaTerrence Welch, as he was dismissed from the team, as we talked about, some big holes there at nickelback and kind of that number 3 corner spot. Positions that are obviously getting a lot of run. The ASU or the staff went out there and picked up some nice names in the portal. We'll see how they fit in. And Boogie Wilson from Wazoo, Kindrich Breedlove, Nyland Green from Purdue. What I though am really most excited to see, and what I think maybe gives me a lot of confidence, is the group of young DBs that came in last year. Some got some little bit of run. Rodney Bimage, Plaz Johnson, Chris Johnson, Tony Lewis, and Kuba. I think we will see some big steps forward from at least a few of those guys that'll help, kind of offset the personnel losses.
Yeah, replacing Simmons is going to be huge. You also have departures from depth guys or guys that could have been starters, such as Cole Martin, Kamari Wilson. So as far as my rating, I'm going to go 2.5 on it just because replacing that back-to-back defensive MVP presence in Simmons is just much easier said than done. I think they upgraded at cornerback, though LT Welch, had the circumstance that he got himself into, which led to his dismissal. I feel like the pickups that were made more than compensate for that. I also think that you're upgrading in the sense of having those younger players that you mentioned being a little bit more game ready. So there's going to be some dogfights going on in quarterback at cornerback. Now you obviously have your starters in Trench and Javen Robinson and Keith Abney, but behind that, a lot of competition as there will be at nickel as well. So there are going to be some. I'm sure there are going to be some scraps in the spring. So again, even though you have to replace your best defensive player from each of the last 2 seasons, there is a lot of excitement there across the secondary.
Yeah, so I think 2.5 is probably where I'm at as well. All right, let's close things out with special teams. What was kind of a four-letter word for the Devils a season ago? You're returning your punter in Canyon Floyd as a true freshman. He was okay. Kind of looked at as a freshman, but some upside there. Really good on the fake punts as we learned. But of course, they was one. I believe it was the first portal signing was Jesus Gomez coming over from from his years kicking in the MAC. Now, I think if you can kick in those conditions, kicking out here in Tempe should be a nice level up. So I think ASU at that kicker spot obviously was such a bugaboo for him a season ago, looking really good there. Some other questions, in terms of who are going to be the returners after Melquan Stovall, such a steady presence back there, sure-handed as your punt returner. ASU didn't get a whole lot out of Jake Smith at returning kicks. They'll have to replace their long snapper and Cole Marzalek, but overall, I think that they're okay. I'm really excited about Jesus Gomez, but some other questions there, so maybe I'll say just 1.5.
Yeah, that's about what I'll go with because there is some reason for optimism, and this is one that could shift quite a bit as the season goes on. You expect Canyon Floyd to improve a lot. True freshman to sophomore season, you're going to expect improvement out of him. You got to
Mhm.
find out who's going to be your long snapper. I believe Moss coming over from Fresno State has some very good return numbers, so I'm curious to see how they use him in that role if that is where they go. Naturally, this entire position very likely, and there's also the coverage aspect of things because that's something that ASU had some issues with in terms of kick and punt return coverage. But I think this whole position group is going to be defined by the place kicker, especially after last year. Expectations are high that Gomez is going to be the guy to right that ship and not just be, consistent, not just avoid being a liability, but also be a very good kicker. So that 1.5 rating now, if we're, looking back at the season and saying that that's the same level of confidence that they gave us, that to me will be a major, major concern. This is a position group that I'm expecting to have a very different outlook on, as the season goes on versus where we are now. But as we are right now, there are just too many, new pieces or pieces that need to advance. So yeah, I'll agree that that's a good spot for that to be in as far as that position group is concerned, which I think might be the lowest. I think you gave that same grade to wide receiver. I think that 1.5 is probably the lowest that I gave, which makes sense. I'm sure a lot of people are going to say that special teams is still the main area of concern until proven differently.
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, this is a team obviously that loses some key contributors, but by and large returns the core of a playoff team, and with some good additions so far through the first portal window, really addressing some of those key areas like wide receiver, place kicker as well, and some offensive and some linemen as well. Overall, if I were to give like a holistic team grade, 2.5. I mean, I feel really good about this. Some obviously some key questions that we'll track during spring ball and throughout the summer. But overall, I mean, just kind of where we were this time last year, to where we are now, Joe. I mean, it really just shows just how quickly, if you get the right people in place, the fortunes can change in a good way in college football.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the preseason expectations, I mean, ASU will invariably be a preseason top 25 team, probably a top 15 team, top 12 to 15. Not sure that too many folks are going to pick ASU in the top 10 without Cam Scadaboo, but I would say top 12 to 15 is probably going to be a very, very common, range that you'll see ASU in these polls. As far as the conference is concerned, I would anticipate that the vast majority of predictors are going to have ASU at a minimum in the conference championship game again. Maybe a lot of people are probably going to pick ASU to win it again. I would say at worst in the top three there with BYU and Iowa State, but the expectations are going to be high. About as high, if not higher, than they were. I don't recall where ASU was in the preseason in 2015. I know Kirk Herbstreit at ASU is like a dark horse playoff team, but I don't know if that meant that ASU was, a top 12 to 15 caliber team expected to win the conference. So those expectations are going to be there. So for those of you in the Sun Devil fan base who still abide by that philosophy of we never want to be ranked or predicted to do good things because that's when we stumble, well, I think you're going to be very, very heavily tested over the next several months.
Yeah, if you want the program to be where you want it to be, you got to get used to having those expectations. You got to get used to having that little number to the left of your team name. And I talked to Xavier Alford recently and asked him about how it feels to be the hunted rather than the hunter. And the answer was impressed me is that he said that this is a team that doesn't feel like they're the hunted anymore. That they're still very much the underdogs, the hunters, the people that are looking to make their name, and they feels that they're not respected enough. And so having that same mentality, even though they are coming in, perhaps probably in a 12 to 15 range, I think that bodes pretty well, and we'll see what ASU is able to do, with the April portal window to make any additional additions to this roster. Of course, with all the changes in college football and how the roster's set up, in the wake of House settlements and all that. But that's tomorrow's problem. We'll tackle that a little bit later on. We talked about the wide receiver position, especially, and one of those guys that is bringing a lot of excitement to Tempe. Very fast player, Jaren Hamilton, coming over from Alabama, was able to catch up with him recently. So here's why he decided to be a Sun Devil. All right, Jaren, let's start off with the big question. Why was Arizona State the right place for you?
I say really, my comfortability with the coaches out here, talking with you know, Coach Arroyo and Coach Dillingham, like they really, I felt really invited out here and really comfortable with the scheme, the plan, and just the culture and the atmosphere. So that ultimately made my decision easier to come out here.
So obviously you came out here for a visit in the to Tempe. When you got to see things up close, meet these people face to face, what were some of the things that left the biggest impressions on you that ultimately kind of incorporated into your ultimate decision?
Yeah, I honestly, it's just like the camaraderie between player and coach. Like, it's not often that you can see a coach playing basketball with their players and having fun and really having that peace, that connection that is important for players to grow and develop. So once I seen all that and got around the coaches and just it was just a vibe. Like we clicked. So yeah, I really enjoyed that.
And also, when you're here, interacting with some of the players, perhaps, and just getting a feel for that culture, from a player's perspective. We'll talk about Kenny in a second, but just overall, this program culture, which played such a big role in their success last year. What was your kind of your read on just what the culture has been built here in the last couple of years?
Definitely you're gonna have fun, but you're gonna work hard while doing it. So like I don't know, it just seemed like a fun atmosphere, and I definitely felt like I just wanted to be a part of something like this. Like I felt understood, and I felt that they believed in me, and they'll continue to believe in me as I go through my journey out here.
And of course, Kenny Dillingham, just in a second, you're having, the incredible success that he had. Still one of the youngest coaches in the entire country. And, as you mentioned, he's really kind of try to find that balance between hard work and also having fun. What's it been like just, getting to know Kenny and the kind of expectations that a young coach like him has?
It's been fun just talking with him. Like honestly, we've been talking every day ever since he started recruiting me. Like it was crazy when he first got in contact with me. He just DM'd me. Like as a head coach, you don't see that often. And like even when I came on my visit, he was one of the first people to greet me at the door. Like usually you meet the head coach like towards the end of the visit and stuff like that. But he came down, I almost ain't recognize him. Like it was unusual, but like I warmed up to it. I got used to it, and like it's just been like a real great bonding relationship that we've been building.
And of course, coming out of high school, you're heavily recruited. A lot of the top schools across the country were after you. Going through the recruiting process, coming out of the portal, how are some things different, or maybe some ways that the two kind of recruiting processes were the same?
I say difference. It's a lot less fluff. Like my eyes and my mind are more clear now. Like I don't obviously coming out of high school, they know like what a young teenage kid wants, and they know like the glitz, the glamour, and stuff. But
Mm.
going into the portal now, I definitely am more smarter. I'm more wise in my decision making compared to 2 years ago. So a lot of things I didn't fall for, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like a lot of things that I probably would have went for coming out of high school, I didn't fall for, or I didn't let it steer my vision one way or another. Like I knew what I wanted, and I knew the type of place that I want to be in. So definitely, I say that's the difference. As far as similarities, uh, the visits were just fun. Like visits are always gonna be fun. They're gonna treat you nice, feed you. Yeah, that's what I say the similarities is.
Of course, now in Tempe, you got a position coach with 1,000 NFL catches on his resume, a Super Bowl MVP trophy on his shelf. What are some of the impressions and maybe some of the things you're looking forward to in working with Heinz Ward?
He a legend. That's really all I can say. And I honestly didn't notice till we was talking about it, but I didn't know he won Super Bowl MVP. Like I didn't know that. So definitely been around him, having some knowledge, talking ball with him. Like I can tell that it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun playing under him and just working alongside with him as player and coach.
As he likes to say, "No rock if you don't block."
Mhm.
What's your thoughts? Just and doing some of the dirty work, the blue collar work that maybe doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but obviously plays such a crucial role in getting victories.
It's gonna be fun, bro. Like it's gonna be fun seeing, like the running back spring got 80 yards for a touchdown because I did my job. So I feel like all of it correlates with each other, and definitely like it's just gonna help the team success ultimately.
Now, of course, you are coming over after a couple of years in at Alabama. First year there, obviously playing for arguably the greatest coach to ever coach in the college football, Nick Saban. What were some of the things just in that one year maybe you took away from playing for a legend like that?
Uh, Having balance in your life and making the right decisions, because we all have decisions every day, and you know what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. So it's really up to you to have self control and making those decisions, because that's like I got practice in the morning or something like that, and I know I'm the type of person, me personally, like I'm not a morning person, so I know I'm gonna have to go to sleep earlier than usual. So that's just a decision that I'm gonna have to make. So whether I stay up late and be tired for practice, or I go to sleep early and wake up and feel refreshed to go.
Of course, playing a couple years in the SEC, they like to say, it just means more down there. But those couple of years in your time at Alabama, what were some of the lessons that you learned that you feel maybe can help you moving forward in your career as a Sun Devil?
I would definitely say it's all about the team. It's literally all about the team. Like whatever one man can do, or whatever a couple players can do, or a position group. At the end of the day, it's all about the team and the team's success. So that's really what I can say. And just the hard working piece too. Definitely just working hard and grinding through everything and staying resilient through it all, because it's not always gonna be easy. It's really never easy to, be in a sport like this and be around such great athletes and have to compete day in and day out. But always just believing in yourself and working hard. Yeah.
So of course, you were busy, playing for the Crimson Tide and the season you guys were having. But was ASU's kind of run to the college football playoff at all? Did you take notice at all at any point of kind of what the Sun Devils were doing and kind of shocking the world in doing so?
Yeah, honestly, when I seen Cam Scatterboo and everything he was doing, it caught my eye instantly. Like it's not often where you see kind of these teams that wasn't having a lot of recognition before, and they really make a run, and it's like a real run. Like it was a real run. Like it wasn't for fake. Like I definitely tuned in, and just it just seemed like a fun atmosphere, a fun culture over here, and it seemed like they really wanted to play ball. Like it wasn't just for fake. So yeah.
So of course, you're coming into the Sun Devil offense. You bring a lot of very like interesting traits and of course a lot of speed as well. Give our viewers and listeners a self scouting report. What kind of weapon are you going to be in the Sun Devil offense?
Explosive. That's all I can say. I'm just an explosive player, and every time I get the ball in my hands, something good happens. So I say, don't be surprised when you start seeing 16 in the end zone. So yeah,
So, in getting to know ASU's offense, you mentioned off the top, looking and talking with Marcus Arroyo, the offensive coordinator. What
right.
jumps out to you most about ASU's offensive scheme? What the things they'd like to do schematically on the offensive side?
I say just really the concepts and the plays, the type of plays that we run. Because being in the Bowers offense, I ran similar type plays to what I was seeing when I talked to Coach Arroyo, and it's a lot of, like the crossers, the deep balls, the shots, and basically just moving people and pieces around to make the best attack possible. So definitely getting up there, seeing stuff on the board, and like being able to recognize certain things and certain concepts and why we run those concepts. Like it definitely had me excited because I've been familiar with some of that type stuff within the past year and learning and all that. So I'm definitely excited to get into it and learn their language and learn, the lingo and all this stuff. So yeah.
Of course, changing schools, but also changing conferences as well. What are your expectations of what football is going to be like here in the Big 12?
Honestly, I just want to ball out. Like I'm not focused on no other team, no other school, no other conference or whatever. Like, college football is a big landscape. I get that, but I'm here now and I just want to win with my team and ball out.
So, not in Tempe for too awful long, but, of course, you're sitting right there by the poolside here in January. What's your early impression of life in Tempe like?
It's nice. It's real nice. I say that. It's nice views, it's nice weather, it's I guess nice people that I've seen so far or met so far. But yeah, it's definitely a different lifestyle than living on the East Coast. I say that, but yeah, I like it out here. It's nice. I think I can get used to it.
So, of course, you're coming into an offense with a young quarterback who's already starting to generate some Heisman buzz for next season in Sam Levitt. What kind of jumps out to you most about your quarterback that's going to be throwing you all these deep balls next year?
I like his leadership. I really like his leadership, and I see how people gravitate towards him. And I can't wait to get on the field and just build that chemistry with him that we'll need this season.
And of course, you're joining a wide receiver room that has a guy like Jordan Tyson, all conference caliber player, a guy who put over 1,000 yards the last season. What's your impression of Jordan and the rest of the Sun Devil wide receiver group that you're now joining?
Real competitive. I like it. Very competitive, very skilled, and I can't wait to just get in that room and add to it, and just all compete with each other and make each other better.
So ultimately, next fall, when you're running out of Tillman Tunnel and the maroon and gold, what are you wanting to show the fans, and what are you wanting to show the world during your time and years as a Sun Devil?
Really, just how dynamic I can be. I feel like adding me as a piece on any team is just gonna be positive. So definitely just showing people, what they've been missing, and that's all.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guest, Jaren Hamilton, ASU's newest wide receiver. Of course, it is the offseason for football. We've still got a couple months till spring, but there's no shortage of Sun Devil sports stuff to talk about. We'll be in your feeds a lot. We're talking some hoops. Of course, baseball is starting up here pretty soon. We'll bring you our preview episode next week. So in the meantime, stay with us on the social media side. Follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Facebook, and give me a follow on all things social at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy42. And as always, a huge shout out and thank you to our incredible sponsors, Cactus Sports, Jones Auto Group, Burrito Express, DevilsDigest.com, Spaghetti Shack, and also Sun Devil Family Charities.
As well as Home Field Apparel, who just dropped a stunning ASU hockey hoodie, part of their Rinkside hoodie collection. You guys just head over to homefieldapparel.com. Check it out. It is impeccable. Best of all, you can get 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com with offer code SUN24, SUN24, 15% off at checkout. A lot of great ASU stuff there. Also, when you're done supporting our amazing sponsors, drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And Joe and I will be back next week as we head to the Diamond to preview Sun Devil baseball.